A surprising new royal discussion is making headlines, and this time it centers on Prince Harry's future in the United Kingdom. Reports and royal commentators are suggesting that Harry could eventually return to Britain in a limited capacity, without Meghan Markle by his side. At the same time, a figure once viewed as supportive of the Sussexes appears to be changing their position, sparking fresh debate about the couple standing both inside and outside royal circles. Could Prince Harry be preparing for a new chapter? And what does this apparent shift from a former ally really mean? Let's take a closer look. For years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have built their lives primarily in California following their departure from royal duties in 2020. Since then, relations between the Sussexes and the royal family have been the subject of intense public discussion. Interviews, documentaries, memoirs, and public appearances have all contributed to ongoing speculation about whether reconciliation is possible. Now, a new narrative is emerging. According to royal commentators and media reports, some observers believe Harry may eventually establish a more regular presence in the UK. Not as a senior working royal, but potentially in a more limited or specialized capacity. This possibility has reignited conversations about where Harry fits into the royal landscape moving forward. When commentators refer to a minor role, they're generally not talking about a return to full-time royal duties. Instead, the discussion often centers on a more restricted position, perhaps one focused on specific charitable initiatives, veterans' causes, or selected public engagements. Supporters of this theory argue that Harry still has strong connections to many organizations in the UK, particularly those involving military service and mental health advocacy. Others point out that any formal return would likely face significant challenges. The royal family has repeatedly emphasized clear distinctions between working royals and non-working royals. Any arrangement involving Prince Harry would likely need to fit within those existing boundaries. For now, there is no official confirmation of any such role. The conversation remains largely speculative, but it continues to attract attention because of Harry's unique position within the royal family. Another aspect driving interest in this story is the suggestion that any future UK-based role would involve Harry returning without Meghan. This has become a recurring topic among royal analysts. Some believe Harry may increasingly divide his time between different responsibilities and locations, while Meghan remains focused on projects and business ventures in the United States.
You had a great scoop about really what the heck is the World Health Organization doing, fixating with Meghan Markle on social media and this project she had in Geneva, when the reality is we've got a new Ebola outbreak that's actually quite frightening. It's one of those common sense headlines that when I read it, I thought, how did we not talk about this a week ago? How did this get on your radar? And what can you tell me?
So I went to Geneva to when Meghan was out there. It was a really interesting thing to go to. I mean, I was the only foreign journalist who traveled out there. It was very sparsely attended. You know, Meghan gave this very self-serving and sanctimonious kind of speech, frankly, about, how we needed to protect kids from social media literally 12 hours after she'd posted a picture of her own child on social media. Make of that what you will. But the thing that I was really interested in when I was out there was I was talking to all these sort of NGO type people and charity, because Geneva's like the weirdest city. It's like a company town of like international NGO land. You know, it's like everybody works for either a charity, an NGO, the UN, like one of these kind of massive, kind of frankly unaccountable, bodies of people who sort of appointed themselves, sort of literally 25-year-old kids running kind of, with extraordinary power.
Yeah.
And but of course, all of those bodies and organizations have seen massive budget cuts because, of course, it started with the USA. There were major cuts from the US administration, But then a lot of other countries, frankly, took the opportunity to pile in. And so all of these all of these NGOs and charities are all being cut. And so I was talking to someone, I was like, why is the World Health? I thought the World Health Organization was like contagious disease,
Yeah.
I thought it, or like vaccines, or like, I didn't think it was like social media. I mean, it seems like if you start saying that the World Health Organization is about social media, because social media, well, I mean, in that sense, everything is about health. Are they going to
Right.
be doing housing next?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just seemed kind of weird to me. And I got chatting to, and I was chatting to, and what a lot of people, sorry, so to get to the point, what a lot of people said to me was that because of all the cuts in all these organizations, a lot of these organizations are trying to grab territory off other organizations. So they're trying to claim and stake out bits of ground that maybe they wouldn't have been so associated with before, and to kind of say, look, we can do this as well, so keep giving us the money. And
Mm.
this seemed to me like an incredibly obvious example of that. I'm like, why is the World Health Organization getting involved in social media? And oddly, the day I was there, these news reports started to appear about this terrible Ebola epidemic, which is now sweeping through Southern Africa.
It's unreal. I mean, I was wondering too when I was reading this piece, why Meghan and Harry? I mean, to your point, I think the first time as an adult, the World Health Organization was on my radar was during the coronavirus. And we're hearing, every day it was new advice from the World Health Organization. They're the authority, it's all about following their direction. And then I think maybe the first time they worked together, correct me if I'm wrong, was when Harry and Meghan did an event in New York about vaccine distribution and how there should be equality when it comes to vaccine distribution. Meghan was wearing that white dress and they were on a stage talking. I believe that's the first time we saw them collaborate. The World Health Organization to me is supposed to be this credible source. So I don't know why they would go, or why the Duke and Duchess would appeal to them when they really aren't credible in any. Okay, Harry and Invictus, Harry and Veterans, that's a credible space. I will give him that. But Travelist, there's been the hypocrisy about them jumping on private jets. Children and privacy, you just mentioned Lily's upload, the pictures of Lily uploaded hours before that. Meghan tearing down AI after being in Australia and promoting this new AI app that she has invested in. What's in it for the World Health Organization to be associated with these people? And in a way, depending on how invested you are in them, giving them credibility.
Well, I think that, look, it's a pretty dry and dusty town, Geneva. Do you know what I mean? There's not a lot of stardust and there's not a lot of glamour. So I think in one sense they'll take what they can get. And this is what they could get to sort of, and what's quite interesting about it is that they're trying to also, it was the beginning of a thing called World Health Awareness Week or something, where all the health ministers fly into Geneva basically for massive freebie, as far as I could tell,
Yeah.
to talk about stuff. I don't know why they can't just send a few memos or have a
Zoom.
like the rest
Yeah.
of the world. Yeah. But they do. And so I suppose to get people to come, I suppose, and then of course we saw this Finnish health minister. I mean, this shows you the kind of Z-listness of the whole thing, that we had this kind of Finnish health minister who turned out to be a sort of vile misogynist and literally accused of sex crimes,
And racism.
posing
And
and
racism.
racism, posing for a selfie. Well, Meghan allowing him to take a selfie with her. So but the whole thing is, Kinsey, right? It's like organizing a foreign tour for a member of the royal family is really, really difficult. It needs absolutely massive organization. You need massive levels of vetting, and you need like real local power, because you need to be able to say, well, who is coming to this dinner?
Mhm.
And we need to vet it's not enough to just say the World Health Organization has invited them and therefore that's the end of our responsibility, because then you end up with this image of her with this guy, Willie Ryland. And, you know, that's the story, right? That is the story. She is posing next to a guy who has called, you know, women and Muslims terms that I literally I wouldn't repeat even
Right.
in my Substack. I was like, I'm not going to write them down. It's just offensive. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? It's upsetting to people. So I think the whole problem with the whole Geneva chip is like a microcosm of like everything that's gone wrong with like the whole operation, isn't it? Because it's like real confusion about what you are. Are you like a crowd pleaser? Are you like a deep thinker? Are you like a political this? Who are you? What is your brand? What are you trying to structure yourself as? And but most importantly, there's like there's no sort of heft to back it up. There's no infrastructure to back it up anymore. We know the whole thing's collapsed. We know they've got no staff left. We know the charities have been shut down. We know that the production company is basically just a you know what I believe in your town they call a label,
Yeah.
which just kind of, you know, slaps their label onto other people's projects. So
Right.
it was a really interesting, I felt, and it wasn't particularly why I went. I just went because I hadn't seen her for a while in person, and I thought it would be good to see her. You know, these people that I write about my whole life, I do like to try and get to see them occasionally. And so that's why I went. I wasn't anticipating it really to be such a disaster as it was. I mean, one very good sign of what a disaster and how low rent and low impact the whole thing was that one stage, I remember her staff was boasting to me that she was having a bilateral. And I was like, well, who's she having a bilateral with? It turned out it was the Brazilian Minister for Health. I mean, it's laughable. The
It
Brazilian
is.
health. I mean, you know, I was telling a journalist about it later, and the journalist said, well, which one? You know?
Yeah. No, exactly. Well, I did see that a rep for the Sussexes kind of came for you, dismissing the criticism, arguing understandably vetting the background of every person who asks for a selfie is not possible. But to your point, it is. If there are 25 to 30 people in a room with Meghan, that's 25 to 30 Google searches, your team should be doing. And this is not the first time it happened. It happened in Nigeria with the person that was kicked out of the United States for fraud. Harry's pictured next to him. I think even Harry used his private plane or private jet at the time. But this is like a reoccurring nightmare for them, where in Jordan, where they're photographed with these people that had pro-Hamas propaganda all over their social media. It is an example of these people trying to do a job that they're not necessarily equipped for. Do your due diligence and be more strategic in the people you associate with. Otherwise, we're going to call you out for it. And I think that that's fair, because you wouldn't see the Princess of Wales or Prince William. I mean, Prince William, when he's engaging with that podcast, that football podcast, he clearly knows who those men are. You feel like he's comfortable when he's talking. I read your article earlier today, but they do seem to be much more careful with who they're photographed with or who they're seen engaging with. And, that helps protect their credibility and their authority.
Yes, exactly. And the reality is that they just don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the staff, they don't have the manpower. I mean, we saw when they went to Australia, it was unbelievable. I mean, the woman, you know, in Australia who was responsible, Gemma, what I've forgotten her last name now, but you know, who organized the Besties podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, she was there going, "Oh yeah, this all came about because Marcus Anderson texted me from their kitchen." I
Yeah.
mean, if that's honestly the extent, Mark Sampson, as I understand, doesn't even work for them. Why the heck is
Yeah.
Marcus Anderson putting together a tour of Australia for the Duchess of Sussex? I mean, it's so sort of low rent and rubbish and cheapskate. And you know, the problem is to do these things properly is really difficult. There's an amazing old film that was made probably long before you were even born, Kinsey, about Prince Charles with Jonathan Dimbleby.
Uh-huh.
and it's brilliant to watch. It's only an hour and it's on YouTube,
Okay.
and it was made whatever 30 years ago, and it has this really interesting scene where, because it's all set around a tour to Australia, and they're planning the tour to Australia, and you see the planning going up to it. It's happening like a year in advance, 6 months in advance. There's like a full-time staff of people, but then the other thing is that on the ground there is thousands of volunteers, right, who love the royal family, who want to help, who'll be like, actually, do you know what? Maybe this person shouldn't come because they've said some weird stuff, in the past, like just to play it safe, let's maybe not invite them,
Mhm.
and the Sussexes, because they have just literally spent this past 6 years just throwing rocks at the royal family. Guess what? Those people don't want to help, don't want to cooperate. So instead, you're left with like literally Dr. Tedros from the World Health Organization, going, come to Geneva, when in fact, frankly, the World Health Organization is now totally on the back foot. It's been totally caught out. And I'm not saying that the World Health Organization can only do one thing at one time, right? Obviously, it can deal with a vaccination drive in X, and there's something here, and Ebola in Southern Africa. But I think it just makes you wonder that if they're going to put all this energy into like social media, it's like completely, to me, and I use the word carefully because I know it drives people mad, but it is a kind of mad wokery of
Mm.
like, oh my God, social media is now a health matter. It's like I understand the point, right? But it's not like, the reason that I support bodies like the World Health Organization. The reason I'm happy for like one tiny bit of my tax dollars to go to the World Health Organization is because they're going to stop Ebola getting to London or New York. I mean, I thought that was what they were there for. I
No, no. I
didn't
mean,
think they
I
were
think
there to
I
lecture
think
us about social media.
I totally get your point, and I think that it's even heightened today because COVID was not so far away. We remember being stuck in our houses, we remember being scared. And so we do want the focus to be on something that might, yeah.
Yeah, but can I tell you something really interesting about? So I was actually talking to again some people when I was in Geneva, because I know some people in that field, and they said the World Health Organization totally tried to get involved in the kind of COVID response, and what a lot of people within the organizations and those structures felt was that the World Health Organization would be brilliant at helping do vaccinations again in the less developed economic nations, but in America, in the United Kingdom, in Europe, in Australia, guess what? The market sorted it out really
Yeah.
quickly. You don't
Yeah.
need the
Yeah.
World Health Organization. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Like, the World Health Organization is, yes, it is for the world, but let's be honest, it's to help poorer parts of the world
Right.
like get access to mass life-saving interventions that are going to have like a tangible result, like,
Hmm.
malaria or
Right.
something,
Right.
not
Yeah.
like staying off your phone.
Yeah. No, that's so wild. Let's pivot to another story because I was caught off guard by this. Dan Wakeford, he's the former editor of People and Us Weekly, was heavily involved in publishing some of Meghan's biggest PR counteroffenses through aides and friends during his time at both of those outlets. But in a recent edition of his Celebrity Intelligence newsletter, Wakeford claims that Harry and Meghan are unhappy and burning through money at an unsustainable rate, with a significant lifestyle downgrade potentially looming within the next 5 years. The report is that based on conversations with 5 anonymous sources, Dan felt confident enough in sharing this. In classic H&M, you know, reaction reacting too much, I'd argue sometimes never complain, never explain is a benefit to you. They told Newsweek, the unnamed sources once again doing a lot of heavy lifting in this report, if they had any faith or evidence to back up what they allege, I don't understand why they wouldn't just go on the record with such claims. Still, I suppose it makes writing a lot easier for Mr. Wakeford when you don't have an editor standing over you asking you for evidence, or for anything to stand it up. I mean, I remember when the Hollywood Reporter wrote their article, and then all of a sudden, Us Weekly had all of these glowing testimonials from current employees. And we were like, you're going to try to fight the Hollywood Reporter with Us Weekly? Dan really has been an ally. And to see a pivot like this, it does surprise me. What's your take, Tom? Because I know you've been watching the chaos too.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting piece, and actually, funny enough, when I was I sort of I didn't really know Dan, but we were definitely around the same era of the British tabloids because he's British, so he would have started on like the Sun and stuff like that in the UK. And I thought so. I thought it was absolutely. I was fascinated that he, of all people, had turned on the Sussexes. Um, I thought it was absolutely extraordinary because, yeah, he was totally, for completely understandable commercial reasons when he was the editor of People and Us Weekly. He was putting all these stories in. 5 friends say Meghan's the most lovely person in the world. Former staff so she makes them feel like flowers being watered. I mean, you
Oh my
couldn't
God.
make it up. Do you know what I mean? It was incredible, incredible stuff. And so yeah, what I thought it was fascinating that he decided to turn it. And of course, it was look, there was stuff in there that's been widely reported elsewhere. So I don't think that there's any serious question marks over what he reported. Alison Boshoff did a piece, on very much the same theme. We've what I think is, and to be honest, Kinsey, right? You only have to look at Harry when he's out and about to see that he's a pretty unhappy fella right now.
Strain, stress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't think that, frankly, you could say that, when they left the United Kingdom 6 years ago, this was the plan, a sort of failed deal with Netflix, everybody hating you and being a kind of laughing stock and being a social media influencer, basically. Like that, as I recall, was not the plan, right? The plan was this whole new model of service. They were going to show the Queen didn't have any idea about service. They were going to show her how it was done, and and so yeah, I think that the tension in the relationship as played out on the social media use of the children, I find absolutely fascinating as well.
Others see the speculation as evidence of differing priorities rather than any deeper significance. It's important to note that there is currently no official indication that Harry and Meghan are planning separate paths. However, the public fascination with their professional and personal decisions ensures that every development attracts widespread scrutiny. Perhaps the most intriguing part of the story involves the claim that a former Sussex ally has changed their position. In royal commentary circles, supporters and critics often shift their views as new information emerges. If a previously supportive figure begins expressing concerns or offering criticism, that can quickly become a headline. The reason is simple. Public perception matters. When criticism comes from traditional opponents, it may be expected. But when it comes from someone viewed as sympathetic to Harry and Meghan, observers often interpret it as a significant development. The key question is whether this represents a genuine change in opinion or simply a disagreement on a specific issue. Either way, it adds another layer to an already complex public conversation surrounding the Sussexes. Looking ahead, several possibilities exist. One scenario is that Harry continues exactly as he has for the past several years, focused on his charitable work, media projects, and family life in the United States. Another possibility is a gradual increase in UK-based engagements connected to causes that remain important to him. A third possibility, and perhaps the most discussed among royal commentators, is some form of informal reconciliation that allows greater cooperation without restoring full royal status. Each of these outcomes would represent a different path forward. What remains clear is that Prince Harry's future relationship with the United Kingdom continues to be a topic of enormous public interest. Whether these reports ultimately prove accurate or not, they highlight just how closely people continue to follow every development involving Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Questions about reconciliation, royal responsibilities, and future roles are unlikely to disappear anytime soon. For now, The speculation continues, and royal watchers will be paying close attention to any new signals from Buckingham Palace, Prince Harry, or Meghan Markle. What do you think? Could Prince Harry eventually take on a limited role in the UK? And do you believe the reported shift from a Sussex ally is more significant than it appears? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more royal news and analysis. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.